Multifamily real estate is a great investment, but how do you determine the value to make sure you're not overpaying and you can talk educatedly to your investors? All that and more coming up. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how you find the value of a piece of multifamily real estate. I pulled out the flip chart today so that I could walk you through the exact formulas I use and you can use as well, so the next time you're talking to your investors, you look like a rock star. Let's dig into it. So what I'm going to do is walk you through how you actually find the multifamily value, how you find the value of a piece of multifamily real estate. The very first thing you need to know is a cap rate or a capitalization rate. Now, the cap rate is a specific number. It's a percentage that's taken off of another number inside of the financials. And here it is. It's the NOI, or the net operating income. Now, the NOI is simply when you take all the income and you minus the expenses. That's your net operating income. But there's a caveat. That doesn't include your mortgage payment. So it's the income and the expenses, not counting your mortgage payment. Because depending on your financial status, you might be paying cash for a property or getting a loan, and your loan might vary on what type of interest rate or amortization you get, and that could impact the cap rate significantly. So they pull the debt service out, and we don't actually talk about the mortgage payment. It's just the income minus the expenses is your net operating income. And you take the NOI and you divide it by the market value of the property. And that will give you your capitalization rate, or your cap rate as we call it. Now, the market value is a unique discussion because a lot of people are like, well, how do I find the market value of a property? Some people value it much higher than others. Where does that value actually come from? It's a really good question. The value actually comes from a couple different places. It does come from comparables in the area. If it's a 10-unit building and down the road had similar financials sold in the last 30 days for X amount of dollars, it will bring this property either up to that number or down to that number. So the comps in the area do play a role, but the value is really determined by the amount of income the property produces. So the first thing we're going to do before we can locate the value is we got to locate that cap rate. And that cap rate happens when we take the NOI, we divide it by the market value. Now we can start off by dividing it by the asking price of the property. If you ever go to the MLS sites and you see a property and it says this property is a 6 cap, what that means is it's a 6% capitalization rate based on what they're asking for the property. Meaning that they're asking $1 million for that property, what they've done is they've divided the NOI into $1 million, and that's given them a 6 cap or a 6% capitalization rate. So the cap rate, when presented on an MLS site like loopnet.com, means they've taken the NOI and they've divided it by that asking price. Now, what they're asking for doesn't necessarily mean that's what the market will demand, and it doesn't mean that's what the comps are in the area. It just means that's what they believe they can get out of the property. So that's why market value, it's a little bit fuzzy on how it comes to be, because market value leverages comps, it leverages income, and it really leverages what you're willing to pay for it. But before we get that value, we got to get the cap rate, and that cap rate is decided by taking the net operating income, dividing it by the market value of a property. So after we get that cap rate, now we can really dive into what the value is. Because here's how you decide the value of a property. You take the net operating income and you divide it by that cap rate. That gives you the value of the property. And I'm going to walk through a few examples of this in a minute so you can see how the numbers really play out. So again, after you get this cap rate, after you've taken the NOI, divided it by the value, and you have it's a 6 cap or a 7 cap or a 5 cap, depending on what market you're in, you'll take that cap rate, you'll take the same number you have here, divide it by that cap rate, and then you'll know how much you should be paying for that property. But what does this really look like on a financial statement? I'm glad you asked. So these two examples I'm going to walk you through are two specific examples of properties I just purchased within the last 90 days. Our first property, the net operating income was about $75,000. And a net operating income of $75,000, and that area, the area we were buying in Indiana, most of the properties were trading at a 7 cap or 7 capitalization rate. So if you take $75,000 and you divide it by 0.07, which is 7%, the cap rate $75,000 divided by 7 as the cap rate, you'll get a value of $1.071 million. So that property, based on its net operating income and the cap rate of that area, is going to give us a $1.071 million in value out of that property. So again, if we've got the cap rate, I just take the net operating income, I divide it by that cap rate, and I can get the value of the property. Another property we looked at had $100,000 in net operating income, but this was in a little bit better area. The cap rate was a little bit lower. Just a quick note on cap rate. The lower the cap rate goes, that means the higher the value of the building is. The higher the cap rate goes, the lower the value of the building. And just to make sure I don't confuse you, don't buy on cap rate only. We buy on what we call the divine number, the cash-on-cash return. But often, the higher the cap rate, the higher the cash flow, but the lower the value of the building. So when you think through these numbers, we want to make sure we keep it very simple and simply say, let's take the net operating income, let's divide it by that cap rate, and now we know our value. Very, very simple. And a lot of times when you say, okay, Mike, but even that value, it's a little fuzzy, how do I figure out this cap rate? A lot of times brokers will be willing to tell you, this is real estate brokers, will be willing to tell you what cap rates are going in the area. We were recently looking at Lexington, Kentucky, which is a market we're really interested in, and the broker's telling us properties are going to trade at a 5.5 to a 6.5 cap. What that means is properties are going to sell to us at a 5.5 or 6.5 cap. Well, if I know that cap rate and I know the NOI, I know what the value of the building really is. And that's the power of a really good broker because they know the area, they know what kind of cap rates to expect. So you take that cap rate, divided by the NOI, you get your value, okay? Here's another example. $100,000 in NOI, Lexington, is about a 6 cap. So we divided this, and this was a $1.6 million building. 100,000 divided by 0.06, and guess what you get? You get the value of your building. Let me make sure I touch on something else. You know you need the cap rate. You know you need the net operating income. You know you need the market value. But what in the world do you do with those numbers? Go back to our examples. These examples that we just walked through is your value is going to be that net operating income. Remember our $75,000 or our $100,000. You're going to take that, you're going to divide it by that cap rate, and you're going to get the value. Now, when you bring that conversation to your investor, I want you to think about this for a minute. When you sit down and say, we've looked at the market value, we've taken the NOI, we've divided it by the cap rate, we've looked at what this property really is worth, they're asking a little too much for it, we're going to try to get the price down where we think it's worth. Immediately, you've built great rapport with your investor. They all of a sudden say, this person knows what they're talking about. I trust them because they know the game. They know what to do, they know the numbers, they know how to figure out the values, and I don't have to worry about doing this on my own. Knowing things like cap rate and NOI and the ability to find the market value of a property really places you in a great place as an investor, because that means you'll never overpay for a property. You look at the NOI, you look at what it's making, and you say, wow, it's just not worth what they're asking. And now this places you in the driver's seat, so you never get into a property that later on you wish you hadn't. I also have a free gift for you. Make sure you join our multifamily masterclass. It's a 60-minute training I've put together to help investors just like you start getting into the multifamily real estate game and scale their portfolio. If you go into the description, the link is there. You can click that link and join us for the multifamily masterclass. I really hope to see you there soon.